All right, so we have all the cards that have been released for the Rising Tides expansion is the name of the expansion. We have so much to go over in this video. I'm going to try to get through as many of these cards as quickly as possible. There are a lot of cool new effects, a lot of cool new cards. So as always, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works, and today we're going to be going over all the remaining Rising Tides cards. So we got, just as an example, we got a new card that actually supports Pursuit of Perfection. We have a card that is named Aurora Borealis that supports Poros, which is pretty awesome, not gonna lie. We have a card that literally makes your unit untargetable and unkillable. A new card that's not cheap, but decently costed that literally can just potentially obliterate anything on your opponent's field. And most importantly, a card that could possibly replace Lidros as a finisher. But before we get into any of those, let's start with Abyssal Eye. So this is some great new elusive support that also crosses over with the deep and sea monster themes. So this is a 5-cost, 3/3 deep. When this does a Nexus Strike, draw a card. This is pretty good. I have already seen this in a few different decks that I have played against. Obviously, when it's deep, it becomes a 6/6 with elusive that has a Nexus Strike ability. So pretty decent card. The only unfortunate thing is that going against other elusive decks, playing this on turn 5, this is almost definitely not going to get a Nexus Strike off. 3 health is a big difference from 4 health, namely that it's a lot easier to kill and target with things like Get Excited. Next is Bark Beast. So this is an interesting new take on a 1-drop. This effect only triggers once, and it's that the first time a unit dies, this gets +2/+2. I don't mind this card. I don't think it's the greatest, though. As a 1-drop, being able to get a 3/3 on the field is pretty good. We went over another 3/3 that had a plunder effect. That's actually base stats of a 2/2. Plunder, get +1/+1. I actually think that's a better card than this card because if you do have to play that on turn 1, it feels less bad because it does have 2 health. It'll probably stick to the board, similar to Cythria. This only has 1 health. It could get Vile Feasted, something like that. And we have a new Overwhelm Noxus card, Armored Tusk Rider, 6 cost, 6 attack, 5 health, Overwhelm. Only takes damage from 5+ attack enemy units. So this is pretty interesting. It's a new concept that is just now being introduced into the game. I don't really know how good this card is going to be yet, right? I mean, you'd have to play test this card a lot. This is going to be very meta dependent. If we're in a meta where there's a lot of aggro, where it's mainly 4 attack or less followers and champions, this might see a lot of play. If we're in a meta where it's more control-y or just bigger units in general, this obviously, it doesn't really have as much of a use. Overall, I think this is a mediocre card. It's going to be very dependent on what the metagame is. Auroch Glinthorn, 6 cost, 6/6, stun all enemies that are damaged. Wow. And this is every time he attacks too. So this is crazy. This can start comboing. This links Yasuo and Vlad together, oddly enough, which is pretty cool. I don't know how I feel about that deck archetype. I don't think the archetype as a whole is good, but this card I do think is very good. If it's not in some sort of archetype now, definitely keep an eye on this for future sets. Again, linking that sort of Vlad Yasuo archetype together. All right, now we have a new Freljord card in Caught in the Cold. 2-cost slow spell. Give a unit vulnerable and frostbite. So this would, at the top of my mind, I think, okay, this supports the Rhymefang Wolf deck, which is the unit that when it attacks a 0 attack unit, it automatically kills it. So this would basically just be a free kill on the board. You don't actually need the vulnerable on the unit, being that Rhymefang has Challenger. So it's kind of a wasted added effect here. So you're really just using it for the frostbite at that point. So I don't really know where this fits in a good Freljord archetype yet. It being slow also significantly hurts its power. There's so many burst speed frostbite spells out there that I just don't think this will be good enough to overpower or replace those. Blighted Caretaker, 3 cost, 2 attack, 1 health follower that kill an ally when you play it to summon 2 saplings. This is actually incredible. I've already played this, or played against this in some Maokai decks, some other decks. This is very good because saplings have challengers. This allows you to decimate your opponent's side of the field and challenge a ton of their units. So great card. I think this is going to continue to see a ton of play. Genevieve Elmhart, 6 cost, 4/4. Has Challenger, has Scout. When summoned, give all your allies +1/+1. Now, I will say, that is only for the round, which is very unfortunate, okay? It's also all other allies. So similar to the Bannerman nerf, she is not getting the +1/+1. We've all learned that lesson. So, is this card that great? I'm not sure. I'm not crazy about the buff effects that only last for a turn, like for Demacia, stuff like that. So I don't think this will see a whole ton of play. Having Scout and Challenger alongside a buff like that definitely helps. So she can scout out, kill something that could potentially block, and then you attack with all your buffed units. I do see potential, but I just don't think she's going to be quite good enough to really see a whole ton of play. Mystifying Magician, 5 cost, 2/2. When you play it, transform an ally into a random 5 cost follower from any faction. So if anybody wants to comment below, because I have not seen anything online about this yet, I have to look into it. The difference between faction and region, I do believe faction is when it says sea monster or poro or spider or things like that, which is interesting because then this is basically saying it has to be a 5 cost follower that has a faction. And honestly, I don't know what all those 5 costs from those factions look like. I could only assume that it's actually a little bit better than if it were random 5 costs from any region because it's a smaller card pool. So I do think this is possible to be played in maybe a 1 cost deck as the top end card. So you can start to get some big units out of those small ones in the beginning of the game. We'll see if this becomes an archetype, man. I'm definitely trying myself a Professor Von Yip deck. Sharif Lariat Rose. All right, this is a 6 cost, 6 attack, 5 health follower. When she's summoned, grant all enemies vulnerable. And this is when she's summoned. So this can get off multiple times if you are playing, like if Callisto were to summon her over and over and over again, you're constantly giving all your enemies vulnerable. I do think this is a pretty good card. I do think that this will give you a huge swing turn because you're also getting a 6/5 body with something like Unguard where you give, it's a burst spells, it's a burst speed spell that gives all your allies Challenger. That's very similar to this because it's essentially what this is doing. You know, I do think that this is very, very good because even if you value giving all units vulnerable at 3 mana, that means you're getting a 6/5 body for 3 mana. So overall, great card. Again, not sure what type of strategy this will be in, but definitely a well-costed great card. All right, hold up. Before we get into the Devourer, which is the card we just talked about, or that I mentioned earlier, that can basically obliterate anything on your opponent's side of the field, don't forget to sub. All right, so we mentioned a card that can potentially obliterate anything on your opponent's side of the field, and that is Devourer of the Depths. So when you play this puppy, you obliterate anything with less health on your opponent's side of the field, or just one specific target. So the downside, obviously, is that this does cost 6, and it does only have 4 health to start, so you can only kill something with 3 or less health. However, he also has the Deep tag, so he could potentially be a 7/7 at some point later on in the game, and obviously you can buff him. So you could possibly do something neat with some sort of hand buff deck, get this out with buffed up stats even without the Deep, and you get a pretty good effect alongside a decent body. So when you look at something like Vengeance, that's 7 mana to kill anything. Generally speaking, if you're able to get this up to maybe 8 health, you can basically kill most of the units that your opponent's going to have on the field. So honestly, I love this card. I've already seen it start to get a ton of play. I think this is great that they finally have a card with Obliterate as well. So it's a good thing to note that if you obliterate something with Last Breath, you do not get the Last Breath effect. So this counters that as well. Concerted Strike. So Demacia's got some interesting cards. Definitely plays alongside their region. Select 2 allies, and they both strike 1 enemy. So this is really like playing 2 Whirling Deaths in 1 turn. And on top of that, Whirling Death has the, it has to be a battling ally and a battling enemy. They don't have to be battling with this card. That is insane. So I think that this is a very, very good card. You can also combo this with something to get any strike effects off. So any cards that can have like, not Nexus Strike, but just when they strike a unit, like Draven, something like that. This is insanely good. Death's Hand. Deal 2 to an enemy unit and 1 to their Nexus. Definitely an interesting card. It is a little bit overcosted, dealing the 2 to a unit. The 1 to the Nexus is really, it's very negligible in the grand scheme of things. So this card is very specifically going to be played in some sort of combo deck that is trying to do burn damage to the opponent's Nexus. You know, you could buff this up with something like Powder Kegs or Funsmith. Then it becomes a very good card. I will say I've been playing with Powder Kegs, and they seem to be very, very, very good. So I would imagine this to be played in something with Powder Kegs. Deep Meditation for Ionia. 4-cost burst spell that only costs 2 the turn that you draw it, and you draw 2 other spells from your deck. It specifically says other, basically because it doesn't want you to chain together Deep Meditation, so you're not going to be able to just continue to play more Deep Meditations that turn. This is a very good card. I was trying to work this into some sort of deck that, I don't know, just to draw. I think it was like a Teemo deck or something like that. I don't know. I don't think that's the way to go with this card, but I do think it's good. I think it's not necessarily a tutor, but it's semi-tutor, right? You know you're at least getting a spell. So depending on what spells you're playing, if you're playing a lot of burn spells, as an example, you could rip 2 burn spells from your deck with this card a lot faster. So it's also a deck thinner in that regard. So I do think this is a great card, and I cannot wait to start playing some really fast decks with this. Double Trouble, a 3-cost slow spell. So this is another one of the spells that essentially takes advantage of using spell mana to summon more units. This is interesting. Obviously, the 2 1-cost units are lower value typically than spending 3 total mana. This could be played in some sort of 1-cost unit deck, which I think would also be another great idea. You know, again, maybe get Professor Von Yip rolling a little bit. I don't know, but this will definitely help you swarm the field early with those 1-attack units. All right, now we have Eye of the Dragon, and I think this is a very, very, very interesting card. This is a 2-cost, 1-attack, 3 health, essentially only costs 1 because of the attune effect, right? Now, you can't play it until turn 2, so obviously that is a downside, but you're essentially getting a 1-mana 1/3, which is incredibly strong in this game. On top of that, if you played 2 spells last round, at the start of the round, you summon a Dragonling. And Dragonlings are 2-cost, 2-attack, 1 health ephemeral with lifesteal. So pretty good control option here too. This is a very interesting card in that it kind of supports an aggro archetype. It's got the ephemeral in there, so it starts making you, question maybe some sort of ephemeral Ionia archetype, Dawn and Dusk things going on, who knows. So it's very interesting. It has the lifesteal to keep you alive. It's really about whether or not you can keep Eye of the Dragon on the field to really keep getting advantage off of these cards. All right, now we have another pair in Hunting Fleet. 5-cost, 7/7, which is pretty big. Ooh, I was, this is reminiscent of a 4-cost 7/7 that I have heard of before from this game that might rhyme with Garthstone. I don't know. But anyways, this one, when it summons a Golden Narwhal for your opponent. The Golden Narwhal is a 3-cost, 2-attack, 4 health elusive that also has vulnerable. So essentially, you're really paying for like a 7/5. So you're getting, for 5 mana, a 7-attack, 5 health follower that is basically going to be able to kill the Golden Narwhal immediately. So you're getting decent stats for the cost. You could also trade it with something less valuable, something else that has 4 attack that can kill the Golden Narwhal. Overall, I think this is a decent card. And we now have the first follower with double attack, Horns of the Dragon. 6 cost, 4 attack, 6 health with double attack. So it's the first time they've put double attack on something other than just a champion. This is interesting for sure. I'm not positive how this is going to be utilized in a deck. I really don't see this being played all too much. The lower attack just seems, I don't know, I don't really know how useful double attack is, right? Like, it's definitely threatening in an aggro deck. If they don't block it, you're going 8 to the face, which is pretty nice. It also has double strike, so you could put some sort of spell on it that maybe allows it to get some sort of strike effect. That might work well. Not sure, but right now I don't really see this being played too often. And before we get into the catastrophe support, or pursuit of perfection, I should say, we have Iron Ballista. This is a 3 cost, 4 attack, 3 health follower with Overwhelm. I mean, it's okay. This seems to be more filler than anything for me. It is a Noxus card, so it goes with the theme. I just think there are better options in a Noxus deck for aggro than this. If there's some sort of overwhelm strategy, maybe this will be good to splash in it as well. It does look like they're starting to push a little bit more towards actual Draven being used for Draven things instead of just his axes being discard fodder. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe this will be splashed in it. All right, so SubPercival. All right, this is 5 cost, 1 attack, 5 health with elusive. When it's summoned, you draw a card. So already it's not terrible. It's a little low attack, but if you've played 10 different cards, it goes up to a 5/5. So I think this is good. If you are playing the Pursuit of Perfection deck, it's obviously probably not going to be played in many other decks. I will say it's not hard to play 10 different cards. So you could see this splashed in other decks. You really could, because come turn, 9 or 8, maybe even 7, most decks have probably played 10 different cards at that point. So who knows, maybe this is the new Shadow Assassin. So again, going back to some of the spells that summon units, we have Jailbreak, which is summon a random 1 cost follower from any faction. Again, maybe this gets put in a 1 cost deck. Again, I don't think this is that great at this current point in time. Jawl Hunters. So I haven't experienced or had any experience with the Sea Monster deck yet. It's definitely on my to-do list. This is a 4 attack, 1 health follower that costs 3 with Challenger. But you also get a Sea Monster in your hand. So honestly, not bad. You're getting a free unit. If you're playing this in a non-Sea Monster deck, it's probably not even that bad because most Sea Monsters are pretty beefy. So you could play this in some sort of aggro deck, possibly. It having 4 attack with Challenger means it's almost definitely going to remove something. And at 3 mana, that's pretty good. 3 mana, 4 damage will trade pretty well with anything. So assuming they don't have something like a Vile Feast to kill it, this will get a ton of value. So definitely looking to try this out in a Sea Monster deck. Speaking of Sea Monsters, we have Lure of the Depths. This card is nuts. This is why I want to play Sea Monsters. 3 cost burst speed, reduce all Sea Monsters cost by 1. Plus you have Nautilus, which reduces everything by 4 once you go deep. So very fun deck archetype. Cannot wait to play this. I think it will actually be relatively competitive. And now we have the most disappointing card of the set in Mindmeld. So for every spell you've played this game, let's say you've played 10 spells, you set your entire field to 10/10. Every single follower, every single champion gets 10 attack and 10 health. Listen, sounds great. It's an 8 cost slow spell. It's just like, this is why nobody plays pack overwhelming. Or overwhelming pack. I forget which order it's in because I don't even really play it. I think I played it in 1 spider token deck, realized it wasn't good, stopped playing it. So, yeah, I don't think this is going to be played. Unfortunately, this is a card that until they release some sort of extra support for large cost slow spells that are not proactive, like Ruination is different. That's more of a field control. This is being active, actually attacking. I don't know. Until they release some support, this is just not going to be good. All right, so we have an interesting card now in Monkey Idol that it struck my interest. I'm not sure how good it is, though. This is a 3 cost 0/4. At the start of every round, it deals 2 damage to itself. It also can't attack and can't defend, which apparently has a tag called Immobile. So even though that wasn't listed as like a new keyword, I think it's technically a new keyword because we didn't have that in the first set. But when it does do that 2 damage, we get a Powder Monkey. And that Powder Monkey is a 2/1 ephemeral that last breath deals 1 to the enemy nexus. So you're almost always going to be attacking with it on that turn. Again, I'm not sure how great this is. Obviously, you can heal the Monkey Idol with things, with a whole slew of cards, right? Like Twin Disciples even will technically heal it. There's a lot of different things you can do here. Definitely seems like an interesting card for sure that I want to try out with some various combos. But at the end of the day, I think this is a little too hard to really build an entire deck archetype around. More powder. Summon 2 powder kegs. Listen, I wasn't sure about this card when I first saw it, but in my first day of playing, I think this card is nuts. I think this is pretty good. I think powder kegs in general are pretty good. So yet to be determined if it's like broken, but I will tell you, definitely try powder kegs. They are awesome and so fun. Never Glade Collector. So this is a card that most other card games have. I'm happy to finally see it in Legends of Runeterra. Seems high costed though, right? So it's a 5 cost, 2 attack, 4 health follower. When another ally dies, you drain 1 from the opponent's nexus. So when something on your field dies, let's say you're playing the monkey idol, right? And you have one of the spider monkeys die. This could be a very good card to play alongside the monkey idol. You will also heal yourself for 1. So definitely some interesting combos to be had. Phantom Prankster is another noticeable one. But again, that might be a little bit too situational of a deck. Definitely a thing to try out, though. Definitely something I will be playtesting. All right, so before we get into the Poro card and the Legos replacement, we have the Indestructible card I was talking about, where your stuff can't die and it can't be targeted. Unyielding Spirit. Wow. So this simply says, grant an ally, I can't take damage or die. So I might lie a little bit. Technically, you can target it, but it won't matter. You target it with Vengeance, won't die. You target it with Mystic Shot, won't die. You target it with anything, won't die. Now, what I will say is I think Obliterate does work on this. I think that if you were to play that card that we reviewed at the beginning of the video, I do believe that you will be able to obliterate whatever you use this on. However, I will say this is notably a burst spell. So when your opponent is playing something like a Vengeance or a Ruination or whatever, you can just straight up deny it. Or not the Ruination necessarily, but let's say they're playing a Vengeance. This is basically like a deny, but now that's 4 mana, right? And now you're spending 4 more mana to also give that unit, I can't take damage or die. So this is a great card. Not sure how it's going to be played yet. Maybe in some sort of big deck where all the units are much larger. Can't wait to see this card get played. Pilfer, 2 cost burst spell, draw a card from the opponent's deck. If you plundered that turn, draw another. I actually don't think this card is that good. I don't know. I'm not sold on the whole plunder archetype. I don't really think it's that great. I think that some of the plunder effects standalone are pretty good if you do get them off, but I don't think, like Hearthstone had Priest where you were taking a lot of your opponent's cards, right? This one, in this game, you're not getting a copy of it. You're actually taking it from their deck. So the reason why this would be good is something like a Maokai deck. You might want to play this towards the end of the game. When you get Maokai off, they have 4 cards left in their deck. You pilfer 2 of them. Now their clock just got increased 50%. So I don't know. They has some uses such as that, but otherwise I don't really see this being that useful outside of some sort of combo deck like that. Pocket Ace is another burst spell. Love the card design. Love just the look and feel of it. Obviously, it's Twisted Fate card. I think I just love all the Twisted Fate cards. Gives a unit +2/+1, and the turn it's drawn, it costs 1 less. I unfortunately don't think this is that great of a card. I think it's okay. I already tried messing around with it a little bit in like a Teemo deck, I think. +1 health, unfortunately, doesn't do too much. It can put something outside of the range of an exact kill, for example, but I don't know. I just feel like most people, if they're playing around something, like let's say somebody's going to grasp Undying, my 2 health unit, they're doing it because they're playing around a Radiant Strike or something like that, and now they'll just play around a Pocket Aces. So I just don't think this card is that great. Pool Shark, 1 cost, 1 attack, 2 health. When I'm summoned, draw 1 fleeting on your following round start. I actually think this is really good. I think this is really good for combo decks. I think this is really good for decks that need to draw really fast, maybe some aggro decks. I already started playing around with this in some decks. I don't think it's broken or anything, but I do think this gets a lot of decks the draw power that it needs to get rolling. All right, now we have a 1 cost burst spell. Give all allies tough this round. This is really good if you're trying to play a token deck. Now, I know Demacia hasn't typically done anything with tokens, so I'm not sure where this is going to be splashed per se. But imagine you have a bunch of Spiderlings on the field and somebody plays a Withering Whale. This denies the Withering Whale. That's pretty sick. So I do like this card. I think it's a great card. Not sure where it's going to see play yet or in what type of deck, but this will definitely find a place sometime soon. All right, so we have one of the Scout Mechanic cards, which when everything's said and done, we didn't really get too many Scout Mechanics, and I think I know why. Scout is pretty freaking good. All right, so this is a 5 cost, 4 attack, 4 health follower. This has Scout, and when it's played, grant an enemy vulnerable. I do think this is pretty good. I think that you can target, you know, there's a lot of 3 health minions out there, a lot of 3 health followers. You have Fiora, you have Draven, you have Misfortune that are all 3/3s. So this essentially hard counters all of them. You play this, and now you can attack one of them, and your opponent has to do something to also kill the Razor Scale or at least save their unit. So I think this is a really good card. I think you're going to see this, especially if there's a lot more play in just champions in general that have that 4 health or lower threshold. Ezreal, anybody? This is also very good against Ezreal. All right, Shared Spoils. So this is a 3 cost burst spell. Grant the top 3 units of your deck +1/+1. If you've plundered, draw one of them. So I do think this is very good. I'm not sure how easy it would be in Freljord to get the plunder effect off, depending on what archetype this is in. My first thought goes to, you know, elusives with Freljord. The problem is you won't get Kinku Wayfinder off if we keep adding more Freljord cards into the elusive deck. So I'm curious to see. Everybody was so quick to play Allegiance, you know, during the first set when there wasn't as many card options. Now, Allegiance is going to get ridiculously, it's going to get exponentially worse as more sets come out because you are now refusing to put other better cards potentially in your deck. Slippery Wayfinder, 5 cost, 4/4, elusive, and attune. So it's essentially a 4 cost, 4/4 with elusive. It's definitely a little bit stronger than some of the other elusives, but it doesn't really have a true effect. So I'm not crazy about this card. I don't think it'll see a lot of play. I think there's a lot of other better elusives out there. All right, so Ladros is going to be last, but we have the Poro card I was talking about. And this Poro card is called Aurora Borealis. And I got to give him credit for the name, okay? This is a 7 cost burst spell. Create 2 random Poros from any region and 2 Poro snacks. That's actually really good. So now if you're playing 3 Poro snacks in your deck on top of Aurora Borealis, you now have a lot of Poro snacks in your deck, and your Poros are going to get very, very big. So Poro could, keyword could, if it has enough stall, actually become a decent deck. A fluff of the Poros will now be pretty freaking big. Yeah, I want to play this just for a meme deck right now, and then if it ends up being good, then great. Strong Arm, 6 cost slow spell. If you've plundered, so this actually doesn't do anything if you haven't plundered. If you've plundered, pick a follower and play and put it in your hand. This is yoink. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's similar to that 5 cost Shadow Isles card. I can't remember it. Where you take a unit from your opponent for the turn. I can literally picture the picture in my head, but I can't picture the card. It's similar to that, except again, it has the plunder drawback, and this one you keep. You are keeping this follower. It's not just till the end of the turn. So I do think this is a good card. I'm curious to see what will actually play this as like a sort of a tech card, I guess. It doesn't do champions either. So again, this whole like Purify doesn't affect champions. This doesn't affect champions. It might see very little play simply because of that. Ye been warned. Ye been warned. This is a 1 cost slow spell. Give an opponent's enemy vulnerable. If it dies, you draw a card. Pretty good. It's basically 1 cost, draw a card, and you are, you know, enabling a challenger unit. You're basically giving yourself the opportunity to kill a unit. I do think this is pretty good. It's slow speed, which actually isn't too bad because you're probably going to want to set up a turn with this anyways. So I do think this is definitely playable. I think it's a decent card. Suit Up. All right, 4 cost, burst spell. When it's drawn, costs 2 less. Set something to 4/4. This is very good. This enables a lot of deck archetypes, like the 1 cost archetype. This is great on Teemo. This is great on so many different Twisted Fate. Just got released. This is great on Twisted Fate. Teemo is honestly the thing I really want to use this on almost all the time. Such a good card with Teemo. So very curious to see what Teemo decks pop up with this, but I do love this card. I think it's good. I can obviously combo with Vi as well. All these cards that the turn you draw them, they cost less. Very curious to see where this gets used, but this helps out a lot of deck archetypes. Terror of the Tides, the big boy sea monster, besides Nautilus, even though he's not a sea monster. This is 8 cost, 6 attack, 5 health. Give all opponents' enemies -2, -0, and all of your sea monsters fearsome. On top of that, he's deep. So that is 9 attack and 8 health if he's deep. This is a big boy. This is a huge swing turn towards the end of the game for 8 mana, which is what you should be getting for 8 mana. I think this definitely goes well with the sea monster archetype. Similar to Frenzied Skitterer. Frenzied Skitterer and Spiders are more of a low-cost aggro archetype, trying to rush face early. Very similar effect on the Frenzied Skitterer. This is for the big boy version. So sea monsters are really just a grown-up version of spiders, right? So I think this is a good card for sea monster. Again, if sea monster ends up being a good archetype, I think this might be played as a decent finisher. Trail of Evidence. Create a random 2-cost card in your hand. It costs 0 this round. This is interesting. I think my first thought when I saw this was Heimer. I'm not crazy about random card effects. This is half the reason I'm not crazy about Hearthstone as much as I used to be. So I'm not sure how good this card is. I don't really think it's that good. I don't think it'll be played much. If anything, it might be played in the Heimer deck. Yeah, otherwise, I don't think this is good. And last but not least, we have Riptide Rex. And Riptide Rex is our Ladros replacement. Kinda, right? So hear me out. This is an 8-cost follower. It has 7 attack, 4 health, right? So it definitely is not, it's not going to stick on the board that much. But if you plundered that turn, you do Cannon Barrage 7 times. And then this is to all enemies, right? Including the Nexus, right? So I got the Cannon Barrage skill up as well, so you can read it. It's a little tricky to understand at first. Does 2 to basically everything. So let's say your opponent has a field of 6 2/2s, right? They're all going to die. And if anything gets targeted again, then the Nexus takes 1 instead. Now, they're not all guaranteed to die, right? It's targeting randomly. So let's say there's only 4 2/2s on the field. Those 4 2/2s plus your Nexus, it's not going to target your Nexus, so it's just going to be the 4 2/2s. Those 4 2/2s are going to be what are randomly selected over and over again, even if they're gone. So it's like 4 spots are being selected, okay? If the same spot is selected after that unit has been killed, then it's going to do 1 to the Nexus. So let's say your opponent has 1 follower on the field that has 4 health. It's going to kill the follower with 2 Cannon Barrages. It's going to have 5 Cannon Barrages left that both try to target that follower, but they all go face instead. So you're going to kill the follower. You're going to do 5 damage to the face. So this is a great clear. This could potentially do 14 damage overall onto a field. So any field essentially that has 14 health or less, this is going to decimate. Pretty reliably, right? Again, it can target something that's gone, so it's not going to guaranteed get rid of everything. It's going to do some Nexus damage as well. But overall, I think this card's crazy. I think it's going to be funny if this does work its way into being a finisher for a control deck. I could definitely see that for some sort of control deck. Awesome card design, and love the name. All right, that's it. That's all the cards for the new expansion. I'm going to go back to some deck building. Oh my God. I didn't even sleep last night because I just want to wait. It's like Christmas. I just want to wake up. I want to build some more decks. All right. That's what I want to do. So as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.